Hi! A couple months ago, I came across this pattern, which is basically a costume for Rosie the Riveter. It is based on what factory workers wore in the 1940s. It includes 1940s overalls, a blouse, a snood, and a sweater. A couple weeks later, I saw this shirt when I went to a union event, and a plan was formed. I'm dressing as Rosie the Riveter for Halloween. I decided against using this initial pattern. I don't love the shape of 1940s overalls. I feel like that type of shape would be hard to fit to my particular body type. After searching around for a while, I came up with a plan. My costume will have 4 parts: the overalls, a blouse, a sweater, and then that iconic bandana/turban. I'm starting with the overalls. I found Sasha Starlight's side-tie dungaree pattern, and I fell in love. Overalls that are fitted, but fit many body sizes. They look comfortable and functional, which is important to me because I plan to wear each of these pieces in my day-to-day life as well. I spent a few weeks searching thrift stores for the perfect mid-weight fabric. Mid-weight and durable. I found this lovely navy canvas, and I'm pretty sure I have enough of it. Now that I have the fabric, I can get to making. I cut the navy fabric out according to the directions. This pattern is a typical dungaree pattern, but it has side ties at the waist and at the ankle so that it fits better. I don't think that I'm going to do the side ties at the waist. Instead, I'm going to add a buckle to one side and then a strap to the other. Put the strap through the buckle, and that's how you tighten the sides. For the ankle ties, I'm not going to do ankle ties, though I do like the idea of a more fitted ankle. So I'm going to do adding elastic to the ankle. Those are the only alterations I'm going to do. After I had cut out the navy fabric, I found a fabric that I wanted to use for the lining, which is this white and navy blue striped cotton, which is left over from a previous project. After I cut out the interfacing, I went through my hardware drawer. It's just this little drawer in this jewelry box that my sister got me from the thrift store, and it holds all of my hardware that I've acquired over the years. After searching through that, I found I did not have any dungaree hardware. I looked online to see if I can get some online, but I live in Canada, and Canada Post just went on strike, so I don't want to order anything online right now. I went to my local craft store, and they had dungaree hardware, but they only had the 1-inch size, where this pattern calls for 1.5 inches. So I have to alter the width of the straps on the overalls to fit this. And the way I'm going to do that, since I've already cut everything out, is I'm just going to add a 1/4 inch more to the seam allowance when I sew around the strap. The seam allowance is 1 centimeter, which is approximately 3/8 of an inch. So I'll just sew the sides of the strap at 5/8 inch so that everything works out. Now that you're all caught up, today I've officially labeled Dungaree Day in my calendar. I'm going to try and get as much of these dungarees done today. It is currently October 1st. I have today off, tomorrow off, and then next day off. According to the pattern, the first step is to interface all of the pieces that need to be interfaced and then to prep your bias binding. Let's get to it. I've just finished one of the ties. You sew them together, right sides together, and then you press them, you flip them right side out, you press them again, and then you top stitch around with a 3mm stitch. I think this is lovely, and this is a very meditative process. Sasha Starlight seems to take a lot of care in her patterns and also in her process. Everything is very meticulous and very nicely finished so far, although this is the first thing I've actually finished. The amount of steps just for a tie, it's beautiful, really. So I'm gonna finish the other 3 and then I'll get back to you. I'm talking quietly because my husband's napping in the other room. I've just finished the side ties. I have 4 here. Next up is shoulder straps, which is basically the same steps as this. And instead of doing 1 centimeter seam allowance on the sides, I'm going to do 5/8 like I previously mentioned. I finished one of the straps. It took a lot longer to turn these right side out because of the interfacing, and then also because they're quite narrow with the extra 1/2 inch that I took off in order to make it work for the hardware I have. Also, I found when I sewed the initial pass around the exterior of the strap, I had the non-interface side on top and then the interface side on the bottom, and the non-interface side stretched while it's sewed, so there's a pucker here here. And there's another one too, though. That one may have ironed out. Oh, there's right there. And so that's a little unfortunate, but I learned from my mistakes. So for my second one, I sewed it together with the interfacing on the top and then the non-interface side on the bottom. And this one didn't pucker at all. I have a dentist appointment in 45 minutes, so I don't know how much I'll be able to get done until then. And I'm getting a filling, so most likely I won't want to talk to the camera when I get back. But I will still show you my progress. I'm done with the second strap, and it's beautiful. The next step is to add, there's like hardware, this type of thing to the strap. These are the only ones that I have that match the other hardware that I got from my fabric store. This didn't come with the hardware that Sasha Starlight's kit came with. I was considering using these, but they are quite wide. They stick out, you can see on both sides. I also have these, which are black plastic. Took these off of a sleeping bag stuff sack, and I have two of them, just two. They don't match the bronze of the kit. Oh, and they're too small. These are too narrow. I think I'm gonna go back to my local fabric store once I'm done at the dentist office and see if I can get 1 inch one of these in the antique bronze so that they match. It's the next day. I did not end up sewing anymore yesterday. I went to my local craft store and it's very small. I couldn't find any sliders that were the correct size. I did get these ones. They were 40 cents, but they're even smaller than the ones I already had. They're too small for this. The fabric won't even feed through it. So I was looking at this again, which is the one I already had that I said I was going to use. You can see the slider sticks out quite a bit on each side. Not only does it look bad, but it might mess with the function. So I ordered some sliders online. I caved. They won't be here till Sunday. It is Thursday today, and I want to keep working on this. Now we're going to work on the inseam. So I was just trying these buckles that I got that were smaller than the pattern suggested. I had taken a bigger seam allowance on this so that this would work, but I've just tried feeding it through and it doesn't feed through evenly. It just all bunches. So I'm going to have to order more of these as well, which is frustrating. I didn't want to buy anything else for this. I was considering just doing buttonholes instead of this whole thing, but I really like how the finished object looks with the proper buckles, so I'm gonna order those too. I finished the first inseam. You sew it together first, and then you serge it, kind of flat fell it towards the back. It's a very neat finish. While I show you how I did that by doing the other one, I'm gonna talk a bit about Rosie the Riveter. I did a little bit of research about Rosie the Riveter, and I found out that she was not a real person. She was actually American propaganda trying to get women interested in working in the factories. But she's become so much more than that. She's more of an idea now. She's workers' rights, and I think that that is beautiful. And I really like the idea of dressing up as an idea because not only does that mean that I don't need to be 100% historically accurate for my costume. The iconography of Rosie the Riveter, the ideas that she evokes, the emotions that she evokes, like the freedom that she represents for females, women, represents workers' rights, which is something that I'm very passionate about. With everything that's been going on in the world recently and how frustrating it is, it's nice to have something that symbolizes that things can get better. She's kind of like a symbol of hope, and so that's what I'm holding on to while I make this costume. There's always hope that things will get better, but then also people need to do things to make things get better. Things don't get better just on their own. That's my thoughts on Rosie the Riveter. Next step is sewing the crotch seam. So I'm going to do the same steps that I did for those last seams, the inseams. I'm going to sew it around the curve, then I'm going to serge it around the curve, then I'm going to iron it to one side around the curve, and then I'm going to top stitch it down. Kind of hard to show, but that's all done. So next, I believe I'm working on the front pocket. My front pocket is prepped. You can see it's slightly curved on the top here, and it's lined. You sew it right sides together, press the seam open, press the seam towards the lining, press that down flat, and then top stitch, and then sew around the rest of the pocket. And now I'm gonna attach it to the front bib. The next step is the pockets, the side pockets, because there's inseam pockets as well. But I want to take a break quick to talk about the sweater that I made. The sweater from the inspiration pattern, in my opinion, is quite ugly, but it did inspire me to want to make a sweater for this Halloween costume. It's important to me to be warm. Last Halloween, I was a witch, and I made a costume for that on my YouTube channel as well. But the cloak that I made wasn't actually very warm, and I was very cold for that entire evening, which was not pleasant. So I want to make sure that I'm warm enough this year. I was looking on the internet for different vintage inspired sweater patterns from the 1940s, and I couldn't find one that I really loved. I figured I'd just make the pattern that I already owned, which was the Alley sweater by Fable Knitwear. I do believe that it is 1940s inspired. It's a very cropped sweater fitted with puff sleeves, and I have already finished it. I started it halfway through the summer. I knit it using Hobie Twister in like an evergreen color and Hobie Alpaca Blaze in a petroleum green color. I did find that the neckline was very hard to do to make it fit over my head. I had to redo it 5 times, which was a little frustrating, but it is important that it can get over my head without pulling my earrings out of my ears, because it did keep doing that. I do think that that sweater is a bit too cropped for my liking, but it's bottom up. I couldn't tell how long it was until it was already done. I chose this green color because I was also influenced by what the Women's Land Army wore in the 1940s. They wore bottle green jumpers. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm gonna try and finish this pattern up until I need to attach the straps, because I have to wait for the hardware for that. And then I'm going to start on the blouse, which I'm going to use this pattern. I can't remember where I saw that camp collars were popular in the 40s, but I do want to make this blouse anyway. I'm going to make view 2, which is this yellow one. It's just a short sleeve camp collar blouse with pleats on the shoulder. Initially, I was going to make it in this dark blue fabric I have, but I've since changed my mind to use this fabric. So I'm going to cut that out off camera. The last part of this costume is the bandana slash I don't know if it's a turban or a bandana, but it's to keep her hair tied back so that it doesn't get caught in the machinery in the factories. I thought that it's very important for this costume to have that sort of iconic part. So I looked at my thrift store and I couldn't find any red fabric that had white polka dots, and I feel like that fabric design is very iconic for this idea. So it was important to me to find red fabric with white polka dots. I bought some on Etsy, and I'm just going to make a simple bandana and make a square and then hem the edges, and then I'll wear that in my hair. That's all the different things that I'm planning to make for this costume. You're all caught up. It's a few days later. In fact, it is Monday of the next week. My hardware came, so let's test it out, see if it fits. These are the overall buckles. I just got the Dritz kind. So I got this giant pack of multi-sized sliders. Usually I don't like buying large packs of things because I'm not sure I'm actually going to use it, but I will definitely use all these sliders because they're also useful for making bags, and I make bags pretty regularly. It is well and truly fall outside. It's very cold, which makes me want to make all of the layering pieces so that I'm not cold all the time. I don't know if you know, but Sew Liberated just put out a coat, the Retazo coat, I think it's called. I'll have it on screen. It means crumb in Spanish. I want to use all of the scraps from all the pants I've been making to make this jacket. I don't know if I'll be able to make it to be worn all throughout winter. I'm gonna try, though it does get to minus 50 here Celsius, which is pretty cold. Hardware strap. I think the 1 1/4 inch is the perfect size. And now let's try the sliders. I think this is the closest to what I need. It's a bit smaller. It works, though it is a little bulky here. Let's try a slightly bigger size. This one looks too big. Oh, it's not too big. Most excellent. It's the perfect size. Cool. I have hardware. I did manage to get the dungarees done all the way up to the strap step. These are made in a very impeccably gorgeous way. They're very, very pretty. Like, even just look at this. This one I accidentally did backwards, but it's still very pretty. This is the back facing piece. This and the straps are the last loose pieces for the dungarees. And it's finished with a bias binding along the bottom, and it's just so pretty. Last night I went to watch my husband play hockey for the first game of the season, and while I was there in between periods, I sew the hem of my square, which is going to be my bandana / turban. I think if I wear it like upside down like this. Oh, it's not long enough. Oh, I can tie it like this and then tuck that in. Maybe? This may not be big enough for what I wanted, but I do think that it gives the effect that I'm looking for. I may need to look up patterns for little caps, so I don't think that this is big enough. That's unfortunate. I thought I was almost done this project. I still have this much fabric left over, so hopefully that's enough to make a little cap. I do think that this fabric's very bright, which is fine, because like these are all new garments that I'm making. I think I do want it to look a little used to go with the workers' aesthetic. So I think I might tea or coffee dye it whenever it's done. I did cut out the blouse a few days ago. Can you see me? This is what the dungarees look like on so far. All I have to do is the hem and then also sewing down one of the side ties. I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to keep the side ties. I might instead do a similar, like a buckle slider type thing on the hip. I'm also not sure that I'm going to do the elastic around the ankle because I feel like I'm pleased these are almost done. I go to work in half an hour, so hopefully I can hem these before I leave. It's a few days later. I've been busy with work. I have to go for work in 45 minutes. I'm doing 6 days in a row right now, which may seem like normal for some people, but for me, it's a lot. I have 45 minutes before I have to get to work. I've just turned on my iron. Let's do these pleats on this shirt, baste these pleats in, and do the stay stitching. It smells really bad in here right now. My dog had a severe case of gastrointestinal distress last night. If you don't know what that means, it means it was coming out of both ends. I was at work, my husband took her to the vet, but before he took her to the vet, she decorated the carpet in this craft room. My husband did his best to clean it up, but it still stinks. This weekend, we're gonna have to take everything out of here, tear out the carpet. This is the last room with carpet in our house, and then we have some laminate that we're gonna put in here instead. We'll see if I can finish this shirt in time to wear for Thanksgiving. For context, I believe it's the 8th today. Anyway, next step, I'm opting out of doing the pocket. You may have noticed that I'm using dark blue thread for this. I'm using the same thread I used for the overalls, and that may seem like laziness, but in reality, I'm gonna probably be dyeing this either dark blue or green after Halloween. So this thread will look good in the final object. The next step is did I cut a yoke facing? Great. I'm missing a piece. I'm supposed to have 2 of these and I only have 1 of these, so I'm gonna have to cut another one. Happily, I have more fabric, so I'll cut out another one of these, do the stay stitching, and then this gets sewn onto the back piece that already has the pleats in with the other yoke piece. And I believe I press one shoulder seam down like that to make finishing easier later, because this does not use the burrito method. I've just finished pinning the yokes to the back, and something that I'm really realizing with this so far is how different these instructions are to pretty well any indie pattern I've ever made. The first sewing pattern I ever followed was a big box store sewing pattern, but that was when I was a teenager and I didn't like it, so I didn't use patterns for a really long time after that, and I only started using patterns again 5 years ago. I've only used indie patterns since 5 years ago, and their instructions are impeccable, especially French Navy. Sasha Starlight's instructions were really good, and I really appreciated how many notches she added onto every pattern piece, so it was so easy to line up the seams properly. This is a simplicity pattern. I think it's my first time making a simplicity pattern. I believe it's one of the big 4 that people talk about when they talk about commercial sewing patterns. This is from the 90s, and the instructions leave something to be desired. It's kind of crazy how many steps they put into one step. Here, look at this. This is the step I'm on right now. This block of text goes with this one picture, and this one picture has like 5 different things on it to show what you have to do. Maybe that's normal for big box store patterns. I'm not used to it. I feel lucky that I have all the experience that I have so that I can make this make sense and make it look good. I may even change some of the finishes to be better depending on how everything is finished. I haven't read through all the instructions yet. I'm just following them step by step. I will sew the seam and get back to you. That's all I can do today. I have pinned the front pieces to the yoke, but I haven't sewn that yet. And it says to slip stitch the yoke on the inside, the yoke lining. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to top stitch it. But that's for tomorrow. It's the next day. I've already been busy working at this. I sewed the front pieces to the yoke and then stitched all around the yoke to hold everything in place. Then I interfaced the collar pieces. I interfaced both pieces, which may be a mistake, but it was very unclear which pieces I was supposed to do in the instructions, so I just did both because it says apply interfacing to collar, which is a little unambiguous. Then I trimmed my edges and cut the corners of the seam allowance, and then I flipped it right side out and pressed it. And then I sewed the collar onto the body of the blouse. That was very confusing. I think I did it right. I had to read the instructions 10 times. They're so sparse, but they're trying to say so much. Here's how the collar looks on. It is both the facing and the collar are stitched from the end to the shoulder on both sides. And then in the center, just the facing is sewed. So hopefully I did that right. Next, I have to do the front facing, which needs to be interfaced. I only have so much time to sew today because I have to try and empty out as much as possible from the craft room. We're going to do the carpet tonight and tomorrow. My husband's doing it tonight while I'm at work, and then tomorrow I'll help put in the laminate when I am off. I hope to get this blouse together before I have to finish taking everything out. I've already took most of what I can take out by myself out. I just have a few small things left. I need those for making the blouse. So I just put the collar on one side, or the facing, and I think it looks okay, though it did cause me to realize that I had sewn the collar on with improper seam allowance, so my basting stitches are still visible. So I tried sewing it with more seam allowance. Collar wasn't having that, so I think I'm just going to keep this seam allowance and then I'll just stitch rip the basting stitches once the collar is done. Those are the stay stitches actually, and then hopefully it'll all look neat and tidy. And I've pretty much decided that as soon as I'm done sewing this, I'm going to dye it either green or dark blue. I haven't decided. I think green would be nicer for my day-to-day wardrobe, so probably I'll do green because my overalls are dark blue and I don't want them to be the same color. I'm gonna add the other facing piece and then finish the collar, and then I think it's just sleeves and side seams before I can dye it. I've sewn the side seams and the facing is attached. I tried it on. I really don't like how it looks. I feel like I kind of messed it up by using 2 layers of interfacing instead of just one. Would have been nice if the instructions were a bit more clear for that. But I guess I kind of knew that I wouldn't like a V-neck blouse, which is why I wasn't making this blouse initially. Mainly just for this costume, but I was hoping that I'd wear it in the day-to-day as well. Anyway, that's all I can do for today, because now I need to pull everything out of this room and then go to work. It's a few days later. Sorry, that's Bean. My husband took out the carpet in here, and now there's vinyl on the ground. It smells much better. It's also much chillier in here, and it's hard to tell if it's the lack of carpet or the fact that it's -2 outside, and that has an impact on the inside temperature. Let's finish this blouse. I wore my costume to Thanksgiving yesterday. It is currently Thanksgiving today, but I did my family Thanksgiving yesterday, and I wore the overalls and the sweater, and they're great. With the overalls, the only things that I would change are I would do a full butt adjustment because there's just not enough room this way. It gives me a wedgie. It's not super uncomfortable, but it could be better. And then the pockets, I would make a little bit deeper because like they go in very far and they go down just a little. So like if you put something in there, it's not held in place by the side seam. Hard to explain, but I'd make the pockets bigger. The sweater is great. It's very warm and it's very pretty and it looks really good over the overalls. I'd say the only problem with the sweater is that it's cropped, like very cropped. Like it doesn't even go down to my belly button crop, which I guess is just a feature of bottom-up sweaters. And I thought that I'd be fine just following the pattern for Fable Knitwear for that because I am short-waisted. So like the distance from my shoulders to my waist is shorter than on most people. But maybe that designer is even more short-waisted than me. Like it is supposed to be a cropped sweater, but it's like incredibly cropped. So I'm just gonna set out everything so that I can just start working on this blouse. It'd be really nice to finish today or tomorrow because I'm really busy with union stuff this week and next week. I'm just gonna give you a quick tour of this room because I lucked out while we were driving to a different city near me to pick up a tool for cutting the vinyl. There's like a vinyl cutter you can get, and we didn't want to buy one because we were only doing the one room, so we rented it. And they were doing kick it to the curb in that city, which is something that is common in this area. I don't know if it's common everywhere, but it's common in this area where every fall people put things that they don't want anymore on their curb, and you can just drive around and view things and decide whether you want to pick it up or not. And I got this free cabinet. I was going to refinish it, but then it like started to snow, so it was weird. It was like 20 degrees and then it started to snow, so I couldn't finish refinishing it, but it is in my space. I cleaned it, I vacuumed it, and it is my new ironing station. So I'll just give you a quick tour. So this is my craft room. It looks much more tidy with the vinyl instead of the carpet. That's the dog's bed, my mannequin, and then this is my husband's area, which is, I think it's cluttered and a mess, but he thinks my area is cluttered and a mess, so I guess it's all perspective. My yarn storage, more yarn. Sewing machine. This is my desk that I work mostly at. Vintage hand crank sewing machine. My ironing section with my serger beside it. And you can see this lovely cabinet that I got. I sanded the drawer fronts because I'm gonna eventually refinish this whole thing. There's my fabric. And then I have interfacing and dye on this side. And then in this drawer, I have my ironing tools, so like my ham. This is a sleeve board, and this is a bias maker. On top, I have this ironing board, which I've had for years, and this smaller one. I really want to make a board that spans this whole top for ironing, but that's a summer task, and it is now winter apparently. And then this drawer just has other miscellaneous goodies. And then back here, I have my thread box, more storage, and there is a closet around the corner that has more storage. That is my area. I thought I was on the sleeves, but it turns out I still have to finish the collar because there's just an open seam here. I have to turn under the collar and stitch it down, slip stitch it down by hand. I think I'm gonna use my machine, even though that might be sacrilegious. I'm still gonna do it. I need to choose a label to go in. I don't know if I'm gonna do the small bee leaf label or the letter bee leaf label. I think I'm gonna do the letter bee leaf label because I don't think I'm gonna like this top very much, honestly. I hope that I do, but we'll see. I'm doing my best, but I think that this pattern is just not well made. I feel like it's not just me. It's not super messy, but it's also not super tidy. And then from the exterior, everything's a mess too. But that's less of an issue because the collar will cover it, so I don't know if I'm gonna worry about that. I guess I'll move on to the sleeves. Also, I've decided I'm not actually gonna dye this before Halloween because Rosie's shirt in the one where she's, you know, giving the strong arm, this is that color. I think it's better to go with the color than something that I like better. Then it'll be recognizable as Rosie the Riveter. I just finished prepping the sleeves. My fabric looks the same on both sides, but it really matters which side the sleeve is because the curve is different on the front and the back. So I just put a pin in to the front so that I knew which was the right side. I sewed the side seams, I pressed them open. I serged the side seams, I pressed them again. I pressed the side seam to the back and then pressed a hem in place, sewed that into place. Oh, and I also serged a gathering stitch, or sewed a gathering stitch at the sleeve cap. So now these are all ready to put in. That is my next task. There's my progress for the day. I finished sewing in the neckband and then attached the sleeves. I think it looks very much like a nurse's scrub top. Maybe it's just the color. All I have to do now is hem it and attach buttons. I think that I'm gonna crop it too. I want it to go to end at high hip. I think that that's a flattering spot for blouses to end on me. And then for buttons, instead of buttons, I want to do press and snaps because I think that suits the aesthetic. I will do that tomorrow. I have to go get ready for work. Oh, my camera's struggling a little. Maybe because it's cold? I don't know. That's my sweetheart. She's a sweetheart. It is the next day. I'm going to finish this blouse today. I'm going to put this on. I'm going to measure where my high hip is, leave a bit of space for seam allowance, only like a 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to do my favorite binding method that I learned from French Navy Patterns. And then I'm going to put in the snap buttons. And I'm also going to sew all along the facing. I'm just going to top stitch along the edge so that it stays where it's supposed to. Definitely too tight on my hip, which isn't surprising due to my pear shape. I'm not sure how much the button band's supposed to overlap, but I think I want it like just past the waistband of my sweatpants. So about there. And then I think I'll cut it 1.5 inches below that. I cut off 5 1/4 inches. So what I'm doing next is I folded the facing to the right side. So it's actually supposed to live on the other side of this. And then I placed this homemade bias binding along the hem. And I'm just going to stitch that down as the first step. So I've stitched the binding down. Now what I'm going to do is fold the binding towards the seam allowance. You can iron this if you want, but I usually just finger press it. And then stitch it down as close to that as I can. And here it is sewn down. So now I'm going to flip it over just like this and take my duckbill scissors and trim the seam allowance. And there it is with the seam allowance all trimmed down. I'm going to fold out the facing so it's right side out and then press the bias binding up like that and stitch it down. I haven't pressed it yet, but you can see how once I've turned the facing to the wrong side, this just kind of wants to fold up like this. So that's great. Okay, that took way longer than it should have because my machine was giving me grief, but this is all stitched down and then I carried it up along the facing just with a top stitch along the edge. So now I'm going to give this one final press. I'm going to pull out the basting stitches behind the neck here because that's messy and gross. And then I'm going to figure out the snap buttons. So I pressed around the neck so that the collar will sit where I want it to, that's where I want it to close. So I'm just going to mark where I want the snaps to go. I got these snaps at the thrift store a few years ago and I really like the pearlescentness of it. So I'm going to use these. There's 6 in this pack, but I think I'm only going to do 4 feels right, but I think 5's better. That took embarrassingly long, but it's done. And I'm pretty pleased with it. I think if I dye it green, I will actually wear this in my day-to-day wardrobe, especially because like it's oversized on me. So in the summer, this will be very nice. It's fall now though. The next thing you'll see is the reveal. It's a few weeks later. Tomorrow is the day that this video goes up, so I need to film a conclusion so that this has a conclusion. It's been pretty busy the last couple weeks with union stuff. Like Alberta government is being pretty upsetting, implementing the notwithstanding clause to take away the teachers' right to strike, and our strike vote is ongoing. So it's been a little scary lately having our basic rights being taken away, but I finished my Halloween costume in time. That's grand. I don't know if you noticed, but this isn't the bandana that I made. I had a union event last week where they gave us all a bandana. It's polyester, but it's big enough to tie up as a turban, similar to how Rosie wears hers. I think that this gives the perfect perfect vibe to be Rosie the Riveter. The colors work really nicely together. I actually like this blouse, which I was a little surprised about. For the overalls, for the side ties, I just double knot it on the waist and then tuck the ties into my pockets. The sweater's nice. It is hard to get over my head, but it is warm when it's on and it's comfortable when it's on, even though it's really cropped. This blouse was really frustrating to put together. The instructions weren't very good at all, but I did manage to do it, so I don't know if that says anything about the pattern or about my tenacity. These overalls are amazing. Sasha Starlight has incredible instructions and everything's finished really nicely on the inside, so I know that these overalls will last for years to come, which is great. I hope that you enjoyed the trials and tribulations of this project. I feel like this conclusion's a bit of a downer. I'm happy in my life. I'm frustrated with my government. I feel like that's pretty normal. I'm okay. So I'll see you next time. Bye.